I want to talk about sort of some of the politics behind what's happened to Obama and what's happened to progressives generally. Um, Despite this victory, certainly Democrats have not yet been able to forge a new political era. That's quite obvious. If a week ago Obama was seen as a failure, all of a sudden he's not become a great success either. We're still in what you might call interregnum, I think, between different political eras, between a very conservative era, which began arguably in the late 1960s, or certainly with Ronald Reagan's election in 1980, and a new liberal social democratic era, which has not really yet begun. There are two coalitions, one on the conservative Republican side, and of course most Republicans now are conservatives, quite proudly so. The other on the Democratic side, which of course includes a lot of people who would call themselves conservatives and support Obama only on certain issues. But it's not clear at all going forward which coalition will be able to dominate American politics. That's still very much open to question. What Gramsci, I'm sure Gramsci has not been quoted in Democratic circles recently, but I'll quote him anyway, called an historic bloc, has not yet been formed on either side. Obviously, the Republicans have lost their bloc. It's splintered in many ways, but the Democrats haven't yet been able to forge a new one. Economically, neo-Keynesianism is not by any means the wisdom of most economists, and certainly not even of all policymakers in the Obama administration. There's still a lot of debates about that. The Obama administration still has to pay a lot of lip service to the question of the deficit and the idea of a balanced budget being the nirvana that all political orders should strive for is still something which is sacrosanct. And also something else, another problem for the Democrats, especially progressive Democrats, who of course are leading the party now, that's certainly true, is that their coalition is very broad, but still in many ways quite fragmented. The different parts of it include labor, which of course, as you know, has been having many problems and is split in many ways. Immigration rights groups, especially Latino and especially Mexican-American groups. Gays and lesbians, who have the Human Rights Campaign, which is a powerful fundraising and campaigning arm. African-Americans who don't really have a movement the way they once did, but they're still powerful organizations like the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus, several other groups, and intellectuals, academics who aren't an interest group per se, but obviously are very important to all of these parts of the Democratic coalition. The problem is that Democrats, despite the great enthusiasm and ebullience that all these groups showed for Obama's campaign in 2008, don't have an agreed upon program, I don't think, that everybody, all the different parts of their coalition agree is important to push, that they all are willing to support everyone else's issue. Almost every issue, a new coalition made up mostly of Democrats, with some still existing moderate or liberal Republicans, there are a few around there, might join on to. Every issue that has come up, including healthcare reform, of course, including cap and trade, immigration reform, allowing gays and lesbians to serve openly in the military, new coalitions have to be formed, new legislative partnerships have to be formed each time on each issue. And one cannot depend on a majority of Congress, on even a majority of the progressives in any of these particular interest groups to support any one of the other group's interests. So in other words, you have the appearance still of a lot of numbers and a very impressive demographic spread as well, and yet you don't have a party which is operating the way the Democrats did for a short time, at least under Lyndon Johnson in the mid-1960s and under Franklin Roosevelt in the mid-1930s and part of the 1940s. So that's still a project which has to be pursued. Let's see. The good news, of course, however, and there's a lot of good news besides the healthcare reform bill passed, is that the demographics are very much working in our favor. in favor of progressives. You might have heard about these details, but just to mention them for those who haven't. Demographers project that by 2040 and by 2050 at the latest, America will be a majority-minority country. That is, African Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans will be the majority. And there'll be a lot of intermarriage, of course, before then. And by 2050, the racial dynamics of America will not look at all like they look now. But with very few exceptions, pretty much all non-white, non-Anglo groups in America are supportive of the general democratic agenda. As I said, it's fragmented. There's lots of disagreements on particular issues, but nevertheless, they are very suspicious of Republicans, very suspicious of conservatives, suspicious of the Christian right. They dislike Sarah Palin rather intensely. And so if the Democrats are able to put together a stronger, more coherent, more stable, more durable coalition, they should be able to dominate the next 20 or 30 years. But of course, all this depends on the contingencies of the economy, of world affairs, and everything else. But this is very positive. Many pollsters on the Democratic side have pointed to this as coming out of the 2008 election. And certainly Obama's success in passing this bill will just strengthen that sense that the Democrats represent the future, demographically and also politically. You know, in polls, Americans, when they're asked, are you progressive, are you liberal, conservative, or moderate, 40% say conservative, 20% say liberal, and the rest say moderate. So that's a barrier. It's not that a lot of the conservatives did vote for Obama, at least some of those people who call themselves conservatives voted for Obama, but not very many. And the 20% liberal, and if you said progressive, would it be higher? I'm not really sure. The polling hasn't been done on that. So that was a problem for Obama. As I said before, I think that ideologically, Americans are usually conservative, but they've been especially conservative in the last 40 years, or certainly the last 30 years. And so Obama was very aware of that. He believed, I think, in comity and bipartisanship, or at least post-partisanship, as much as he could. But it was also a strategy, of course. And I think it was, and continues to be, as Bill was saying, I think an important strategy. Americans don't want one party to be dominant as much as the two of us might want the Democrats to be dominant for many years to come, and Obama was very aware of that. That's why he was trying to win over these two senators from Maine and thought he had them, and trying to pick off part of the Republicans as much as he could. So, in that sense, and of course he named a lot of people from the Clinton administration, especially in economic policy, who he knew respected on Wall Street, and people who would be able to work with the Federal Reserve under Bernanke and so forth, and respected by the world markets. So in that sense, I think he was being very strategic and probably made the right decision, I think. You know, liberals in the United States, perhaps like you know, in some ways they're like Tony Benn was, you know, in the 80s in some ways. I mean, they have wonderful arguments about why everything should be done the way they want them to be done, but they are not very good at figuring out necessarily how to win with those arguments. And so I've written a couple sort of short editorials in Dissent, sort of calling for liberals, progressives to make a sort of popular front, if you will, with Obama, despite the Stalinist provenance of that term.